Welcome to Truevo Talks. My name's George Boot, and today is Data Privacy Day. So I thought, what better reason to get our data privacy consultant, Ivan Spiteri, on the podcast to have a quick chat around exactly why this subject is so important to your business. We also cover a couple of interesting things around H&M and Amazon and their recent breaches, but I'm not going to keep this intro too long. Let's run the intro music. How are you? Good morning.
Good morning.
You all right?
All right.
Quick question. I wanted to understand a little bit about yourself and how you got into the area that you're in now, which is data privacy.
Yes. In a nutshell, I'm a technology consultant doing a lot of different things within technology.
Yep.
I'm a GDPR specialist, and this came about my passion about data and data privacy.
Yep.
And this came about working in technology for the past 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I built my hands-on experience across several industries, so I could sort of combine all the knowledge between what I gathered during my work in different companies.
Yeah, great. Okay, awesome. I think I've got a couple of questions prepared that I want to understand a little bit more on. And I think from my point of view, this is going to be really good for me and equally for the audience and the listeners, because I think data privacy is something that I should know more about, and it's something that I want to educate myself on. And equally, I think hopefully the listeners want to as well. So I suppose the first area I want to start with is kind of what is data privacy and why is it important? I think that's a good place to start.
Yes, I mean, what we can say today, for example, is Data Privacy Day.
Yep.
Which,
indeed it is.
Today we commemorate the first legally binding international treaty that was signed in 28th January 1981.
Wow.
I mean, since then the world changed a lot.
I was going to say, yeah, I'm sure a lot has changed since then, so I'm interested to get into that.
No one actually could have predicted how companies would end up basing their entire business models on user data.
Yes.
So, as you can imagine, every single click we make online, every single purchase we make online, everything is being tracked.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is why data protection is and privacy is crucial now more than ever.
Yes.
In this globalized and connected world.
Mm-hmm.
In the past few years, there has been a concerted effort with data privacy regulations to improve, set new standards and requirements that companies must follow to secure and be compliant.
Yep.
The most notable one was and is the GDPR.
Yes.
GDPR has massively impacted the global privacy landscape since its implementation in May 2018.
Okay.
This was actually introduced to give EU citizens more control over their personal data, and at the same time holds any organization accountable for the collection, handling, and processing of customer data. So actually, the Data Privacy Day is a day where companies, government institutions raise awareness of privacy and a global effort to encourage individuals and businesses to respect privacy, protect data, with the ultimate intent to build a privacy culture.
Yes. Okay. it's all starting to make a little bit more sense with the training that I've done through Truevo and the training that I've done through previous employers. It all starts to make sense. And I suppose the burning question for me is why is data privacy and GDPR most important to a business? And if, like you say, if businesses are actually now starting to plan their business plan around data privacy, what's the reason that GDPR and data privacy is so important?
Well, nowadays, most companies process personal data on a regular basis.
Yep.
So when customers give personal information to businesses, they are entrusting them with this data.
Yep.
And they expect that measures are taken to secure and protect it. Unfortunately, this isn't always the case, as we have seen from many data breaches,
Yes. Yes.
which made headlines over recent years.
Okay, I'll be interested to hear about a couple of them.
Yeah, I can. I mean, there was Amazon's huge GDPR fine last year, 746 million.
That's a lot of money.
Yes, it was 15 times bigger than the previous record fine. The full reasons behind the fine haven't yet been confirmed, but we know that the cause was to do with cookie consent.
Okay.
It's tempting to force users to agree to cookies.
Yes.
You know, all those pop-ups, buttons, and making opting out of cookies very difficult.
Yep.
To collect as much personal data as possible.
I think from my point of view, the way I kind of see that is it's more of I see it as a little bit more of an opportunity for when I go onto a website and it usually pops up at the bottom or it pops at the top saying, do you accept all, or would you like to manage your cookies, this, that, and the other. And for me, it actually sometimes feels like a better user experience if you accept them all. Yes. Because if I look on a certain website and then I go to another website or I go to social media, I'm then able to see different variables of what I've searched on Google and clicked on certain websites. So for me, it's a little bit of a better user experience, but equally they're tracking me. So
yes,
I suppose
but you know that you are being tracked and you have freely given your consent.
Yes.
Right. Some companies, they don't give you that opportunity.
Yep. Okay.
That is the difference.
Yes, I suppose. Yeah. And is that what we're referring to when we're talking to Amazon? When we're talking about Amazon?
Yes, because if they have given that opportunity, they would have avoided this GDPR fine.
Yes. Okay.
I can mention another example, a bit different.
Yes, please. Yes, please do. That's the interesting part. I love it.
An interesting one was H&M.
H&M?
Which was fined. Yes.
Okay.
Well, it was fined 35 million by the German regulators in 2020.
Okay.
It found that they have been secretly monitoring hundreds of its employees.
Of its employees, not just customers?
Yes. No, employees. So
wow.
Workers that took holiday or sick leave were required to attend a meeting with senior staff on their return.
Okay.
And these meetings were recorded and made accessible to H&M managers without the knowledge of staff.
Why? Is my immediate question is why?
Yeah. Why? Basically, from what we know is that the data that has been collected from the interviews was being used to make a detailed profile of the workers.
Okay.
Which then influenced the decisions concerning employment. Okay?
Yeah, I'm with you, yeah.
In a nutshell, H&M appears to have violated the GDPR's principle of data minimization, meaning don't process personal information, particularly sensitive data about their health and beliefs, unless you need it.
Okay, yeah, I get that. I get that, yeah.
So that was quite an eye-opener for many, I think.
I can imagine. And I suppose it's it's almost we see these big headlines of the H&Ms and the Amazons and stuff like that. I think we're going to get onto the smaller retailers in a minute and how important it is for them. But it's just apparent that, you know, regardless of the size of the company and how big you are and how big your process may be, you still got to be just as important as the small guys.
Yes.
And I think that's something that we need to reiterate, especially it's something that needs to be considered anyway.
I mean, considering that in 2021, the data protection authorities in the EU issued 437 fines.
Yep.
For a total of 1.3 billion in total.
Wow.
So it's significantly increased from the previous year.
Yep.
Even for SMEs.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no doubt that mismanagement of personal data can have quite damaging consequences for businesses of any size.
Yep.
With heavy fines, reputational damage, and loss of consumer trust.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's a really important insight into why it's so important. And I think it leads nicely on to the next question that I want to ask, which is, what advice do you have for companies if they were to stay compliant? You know, are there any sort of tips and tricks that you can offer? Are there any sort of easy management things that they can implement into their process? What advice have you got for companies? Let's stay at that.
Okay. So under GDPR, compliance will not be a one-time effort. It's not a checkbox process.
Mm-hmm.
From my experience, the best way is to take a proactive approach to monitor, detect, not only to prevent breaches by hackers or accidental exposures, but to ensure that any personal data you are responsible for is being properly managed. I know it's easier said than done.
I'm sure it is.
But today, there are many resources that a company can use to understand its compliance, its responsibilities, and those of any suppliers engaged with the same business. Mentioning suppliers, my opinion, monitoring suppliers is currently the biggest and potentially most dangerous GDPR blind spot.
Really, I would like to explore that a little bit more if you've got the time, because I think it's one thing that might be overlooked by especially the small businesses that essentially that I deal with on a day-to-day basis. You know, at Truevo, we deal with lots of small to medium and essentially some large merchants as well. But from the smaller end, they might think it's just about them, and the data protection is just about them and their customers and their employees. However, suppliers can be massively overlooked, and I think if you could dive a little bit deeper into that, that would be great.
Sure. I mean, today's complex supply chains, including potentially multiple clouds, and managed service providers, makes it particularly challenging. But it's also vital, given that many breaches happen when your suppliers are attacked and used as a stepping stone into your network.
Right. Okay.
So, I mean, revisiting all your contracts, audit your suppliers, carrying out due diligence on your suppliers.
Yep.
For to be compliant would be something I would strongly recommend.
Yeah, and that's the monitoring on the supplier's end, and that and making sure that that's almost a top priority when it comes to staying compliant.
Yes.
Great. Okay, I think that's something that we may need to explore at a later date. I know that we've got another important milestone. Is it coming up in March this year? Is this more to do with GDPR? What's the we've got another milestone, almost like Data Privacy Day, but is it later on in the year? When is it? I think we discussed it on a call the other day.
I think it's in May.
In May, that's it. I knew it was an M. I knew it was an M.
Yes. It's in May. It's the anniversary of GDPR.
Okay, so maybe we look to dive a little bit deeper into that, but I'm conscious of time, and I want to keep this fast, and I want to keep it nice and flowing. So Considering the merchants that Truevo are looking to deal with next year on the e-com front, I suppose it's more in that retail and e-commerce industries. So a leading question that I wanted to ask is, why is data privacy particularly important for that retail and e-commerce industry especially when it's processing payments, not just about keeping an eye on its customers and all that, what we've just mentioned, but specifically retail and e-commerce when they're just processing payments? Why is it so important?
Okay, so the role of customers' data in retail industry has dramatically grown.
Yep.
Okay, it grew even more in the last 2 years due to the pandemic.
Okay.
So many retail businesses shifted online to survive. Lockdowns, social distancing accelerated the adoption of e-commerce. And as you may appreciate, online purchases is almost impossible to complete a transaction without sharing your personal data.
Yes.
And it is exactly for this reason that data privacy has now become one of the most pressing concerns in e-commerce. Let's say that you are an online retailer and you store credit card data. You store it on your systems.
Yes. Okay.
You are exposed to security breaches.
Yep.
Adding to that, since May last year, the European Data Protection Board has recommended online retailers to use consent, freely giving consent.
Yep.
That only as their only appropriate legal basis to store credit card data.
Okay.
So they need consent to store it. And this is adding further requirements to already existing complex requirements to store credit card data.
Mm-hmm.
Companies that fail to safeguard this data not only could lose their customer confidence, but can be slapped with heavy fines for privacy breaches.
Yep.
And also for non-compliance to the payment cards industry data security standard.
Yes. Yeah.
Commonly known as PCI.
PCI. Yes. This is the area that I'm more familiar with when it comes to data privacy. Is a lot of conversations I have with merchants is around how they can stay compliant, and lots of different ways to integrate your payment gateway is one of the ways to stay compliant. Do you want where are you storing those card details? Are you storing them on your servers due to an API integration? Is that how you want to do it? Some merchants feel they want to do that due to the control that they have over the actual payment experience, but equally they've got to take more care when it comes to PCI. However, some merchants want to integrate in a few different ways, like a hosted payment page or a widget integration where all the card details are entered on the website but stored on our servers. Yes. Which can therefore makes them far more compliant and less, I suppose, what's the word I'm looking for? Less risk adverse, and they're more, we're looking after those card details then, not the merchant.
Exactly. I mean, using a competent PCI payment processor, I think it's one of the best solutions around in order to implement a proper security for your customers.
Yep.
But ultimately, I think the most crucial thing is knowing the responsibilities for your business.
Yes, we could go into those if you don't mind.
Breaches are increasing year on year.
Yep.
And customers want to be reassured that their data is protected.
Yes, 100%.
To even make an order, you have to put all the details.
Yes.
Addresses.
So all of that, I suppose, falls into what we mentioned earlier around the GDPR scope, which is that element is one element, which is the customer addresses, phone numbers, email addresses is also one, but then the PCI compliance end is also a separate part. And some people might think they're not
data. Yes, still personal data, it's financial data. So it's even more important for individuals.
Yep.
To secure it. So yes, I mean, customers want to be reassured that their data is protected.
Yeah.
They want businesses to only use their data for the intended purpose.
Yes.
And they want them to be transparent when handling their data.
Yep.
Not use it for something else that they weren't supposed to use it for.
Yep.
And handling their and trust business with their valuable data. The business owes them, I think, nothing less than the best protection.
Of course.
That can be provided.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think just to wrap up, because I think this is good timing, we've just hit the 20-minute mark. So I think it's a great time to wrap up. But off the top of your head, if you've got anything burning that you want to mention, what would you give as a piece of advice to a small to a medium or large merchant right now, after listening to this? What's the next step that they could do, or what's the next step that you would give them? As in, say, right, okay, if you want to take immediate action after listening to this podcast, what could you go and do?
I think one of the areas which is overlooked is privacy training for employees.
Okay.
Education plays a critical role in preventing privacy incidents and reducing data breaches.
Yep.
And training makes privacy protection a shared objective.
Yes.
And can prevent employees from mishandling clients or even employee data, as we saw from
from H&M.
the example.
Yes.
So that would be my
immediate advice. Go and look into some training and getting the employees up to speed on what exactly is important when it comes to GDPR and data privacy. Yes, great. No, I really appreciate your time. So we're going to wrap up there. I think there's been some great pieces of insight here. And as I said, with the next milestone of the anniversary of GDPR coming up in May, I'm sure we're going to do another podcast and have some burning questions from our customers and from our clients, and equally partners, because I think it could be an opportunity there for them as well. So I really appreciate your time. So thank you very much. And I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you for having me.
No worries. However you've chosen to listen or watch this podcast, we really appreciate feedback, and any likes and comments and subscribes, whatever platform you're watching or listening on, would be much appreciated. Thanks very much for listening.